Hi guys, welcome. Okay, I'm just getting set up here. I am Nicole Sanders of Early Intervention Therapy Services. Nice to be with you guys again. Today we are going to be talking about some of the common mistakes that we tend to make as parents when we're trying to get our kids to talk. I hate to use that term mistakes because I think it has a negative connotation, and I don't think by any means we're making mistakes as parents. It's trial and error. We're trying to see what's going to work with our kids, what's going to help them talk. So I don't necessarily think it's a mistake. So for the purpose of this video, I'll use it as that. But 4 common mistakes that I have found as a therapist that we tend to make as parents when trying to get our kids to talk. So again, I do early intervention. I focus my therapy on cognitive skills, any delays. I work with kids who are delayed from all over or who are showing delays, including speech therapy. But one of the things that I work with parents on is I coach them. So I have like a parent coaching model that I do with parents to help them try to get their kids to talk. And usually we start this at about 15 to 18 months of age when we're starting to see that kids are not able to speak yet. We go ahead and start coaching parents. Okay, these are some tips that we'll give you that will hopefully promote their speech development. Through that, I have added some things together that I've noticed that parents tend to do throughout trying to get their kids to talk. So we'll just go ahead and dive on in. I'll try to keep this a short video. One is, we'll go ahead and start 4 common mistakes that I notice. One is asking too many questions. And so we so desperately want our kids to talk, right? We want to hear them, we want them to talk, but we ask so many questions. And so it becomes, do you want this? Do you want eggs for breakfast? Do you want bacon for breakfast? Tell me what you want. Do you want your bottle? Do you want a cup? We are constantly going through the day and asking them questions with the expectation that they're going to respond back. It's almost setting your child up for failure a little bit because we're asking so many questions expecting a response and we're not getting it. So then we're disappointed, the child's disappointed because they can't relay to you what they want to relay to you. It's like almost someone asking you a question. Let's take this for instance. You get into a fight with your husband and you want to speak and you just can't. It's like, man, I had a really good argument to that and I can't say anything back. That's almost like it is with the child. You're asking them questions and I'm sure they would love to give you a response, but they just don't have the tools yet to be able to. So it's frustrating for them when we're in their face all day long saying, do you want to play with blocks or do you want to play with Play-Doh? Do you want to play with this? Do you want to play with that? What do you want? We will sometimes even use that response. What do you want? They're not going to respond back if we already have established that they're not talking at the time. So that is one of the common mistakes that I notice. But the good news is I always provide solutions with some of the mistakes that I see parents making. One of those is instead of asking them questions, we can make them statements. So it's instead of, do you want to pop bubbles? We can turn that into, let's pop bubbles. So we're not setting them up to have to fail a question, basically. We can also provide them with choices. So instead of asking a question, you can maybe hold up something, bubbles, Play-Doh, and see if they will gravitate towards one or the other. They don't have to speak. Even though we desperately want them to, in the beginning stages, they don't necessarily have to speak. So we can even just give them 2 select choices. Do you want milk or juice? Hold it up for them and see if they will even just touch one of them. Point, touch. We can even just start with the basics. That is communication. Maybe not in the form that we want it to be, not language, but it is still communication. Pointing, touching, grabbing, something showing us, that they have made a choice. So if I'm holding up, show me what you want. See if they will just grab something. Oh, great, you want your cup. Here's your cup. So giving them choices instead of asking them an abundance of questions will cut down a little bit on their frustration, but also your frustration, because you won't be frustrated when you stop getting blank answers and they actually start to gravitate towards one thing or the other. You will be a little bit more excited too. It's kind of reinforcement for us as parents too, because you're like, oh, he chose something. He wants to play with this or she wants to play with this. So that kind of helps too. So avoid asking too many questions. And I get this a lot from parents because even when I started therapy, I had the biggest time in therapy with this. I used to have to record myself And I would watch myself ask kids throughout therapy sessions, show me what you want to play with. Do you want to play with this? How are you doing today? Tell me how you're feeling. I would talk to them as if I'm expecting a response back. And it's just setting us up both for failure a little bit. So I struggle with that as a therapist, and I hear numerous parents struggle with that. The good thing is that once you're conscious of it, you start to catch yourself throughout the day. You'll start to realize, oh, I am asking so many questions. Let me turn some of these questions into statements, or at least just start to give them options to choose from. So that's one of them. I'll check that off our list. The next one is going to be simplify our speech. And this kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. So I noticed that parents will have full-on conversations with their kids, which is great. That's great. But the problem is that when we have a child who has a speech delay or who is not talking yet, sometimes they're not hearing every single thing that we're saying. So turning long sentences is like, tell me what you want, or we're going to play with some bubbles today. Like saying a statement that long, we can shorten it a little bit to, instead of, hey, we're going to play with bubbles today. Bubbles? Just leave it at that. Bubbles? We can just simplify our speech a little bit. I learned early on too to do what I call the one-up rule a little bit. So if your child currently has 0 words in their language, then we just add 1 word to that. So instead of saying, hey, do you want to play with bubbles? Again, a question, avoid asking questions, or even making a statement, hey, we're going to play with bubbles today. We can just say, cut the whole sentence out, bubbles, bubbles, and then show them the bubbles. Keep it really simple. If your child has 1 word in their vocabulary, again, the one-up rule. So we'll add 1 word to that. Want bubbles? More bubbles? Bubbles, please. We'll just add 2 words to that. It doesn't have to be full, long sentences, especially when you have a young kiddo, 18 months. That's a lot of things that they're being exposed to, a lot of expressive language that they're hearing. So let's just simplify it a little bit. Let's cut our conversations down just a little bit and give them manageable words. Same thing with eat, instead of saying like, oh, we're gonna go to dinner in just a little bit, just say dinner, turn that just single word. Eat, let's eat. Let's drink, make it a little bit simpler for them. So I really encourage to simplify your speech. And again, these are just conscious things that you'll start to notice yourself as a parent doing throughout the day. I will say this. I notice mothers have a harder time with the questions and simplifying speech. They have a harder time with this than dads do. And I'll tell you the reason behind that. Women and men are different. Women are known for being a little bit more expressive. So we are talkers. We like to kind of talk a little bit more than most dads do. So I noticed that when I'm coaching parents through and I'm watching some of the behavior patterns, dads don't really have a hard time with this. Again, stereotyping, some dads do. But overall, men seem to not talk a lot anyways. They seem to not ask a lot of questions anyways. So it comes a little bit easier, whereas moms are just, they're so eager and they so want to talk to their child. So we tend to have to, coach mothers a little bit more on this. Like, hey, let's just back off a little bit. Let's just give them a little bit of space. Let's simplify our speech. We have to coach moms just a little bit more. So that's one thing that I would also encourage, is to simplify your speech. The next thing is going to be overly prompting. If you're not familiar with prompting, I'll go ahead and give you a little background. Prompts are cues that helps your child respond to a new skill. And so the rule of thumb that I use for prompting is going to be, let's just prompt 1/3 of the time. So I'll give you an example. Let's use the bubbles example. I always use that because I use bubbles all the time with my kids. But bubbles is one. If we're prompting for your child to say bubbles, or to ask for more, or to even just approximate like ba for bubbles, that would be a prompt. We're prompting for that language a little bit. What I notice is that a lot of times, give me 1 second, someone's coming in. So I might hear. Okay, anyways, I'll keep going. If somebody comes in, it's okay. But what I notice is that with the overly prompting is say bubbles, say bubbles, say bubbles. You're holding up the bubbles, hoping that your child's gonna say bubbles, come on, you can do it, say bubbles. And it's a bit too much. And so I notice that when I'm coaching parents, again, you're so excited and you want them to speak, but we're almost overly prompting for that, and it becomes frustrating as a child. And then this is sometimes what I always say is to put yourself in your kiddo's spot a little bit. So I had this one particular mom, and she would do that. We would practice with bubbles. Like, okay, we just want him to work on saying "b" for bubbles. And we knew he could say it, but he wasn't always motivated to say it. And so when we would prompt for bubbles, we would say bubbles, and then she would get so close to us and say bubbles, you can do it, say bubbles, you can do it. It becomes a little frustrating for kids. And so as an adult, you wouldn't want someone doing that either. You wouldn't want somebody coming in your face constantly saying, say this, say this, say this. It would get a little annoying. And so that's just what I also encourage for parents too, is just to take a step back. So when we prompt, even though we might know that they have that one word in their vocabulary or that one sound in their vocabulary, if they don't do it that particular time, that's okay. We'll just pass it on up. It's a missed opportunity. We'll try again another time. Not to say that we can't be persistent. We just don't want to overly prompt. So we don't want that continuous, say bubbles, come on, you can do it, say bubbles. I've heard you say it before. You said it last week. Say bubbles today. No, say bubbles. Give it a little bit of time. We don't, we'll keep it moving, okay? So let's not overly prompt for things. Again, let's just kind of, we want our kids to talk so much, but let's just take a little bit of a break and step back a little bit so that we can produce a little bit of patience for them so that they can come and communicate with us. So overly prompting, I would encourage just to take a step back on that as well, even if it's a word that you know your child has in their vocabulary. We'll get to that later. There's a lot of key points to this. I'm kind of just bullet pointing some things. The next thing, which will be the last thing, one of the common mistakes that I notice is sometimes the reinforcements are not highly motivating. And so what that means is reinforcements I always kind of equate to reward. Providing a reinforcement is like providing a reward for a child. So it's like, oh, you said this, so you get this type mentality, or oh, you did this, so you get this. Some people call it bribing, but we'll get it. That's a different topic for a different day. But reinforcements are great. People work on reinforcements. We as adults work on reinforcements. We go to work so that we can get a paycheck. Kids are no different. They work for something so that they can get something out of it. It's the exact same concept. So that's reinforcements. What I notice is that the reward that we try to provide kids might not be highly motivating for them to speak. So one, I would encourage to find that reward, that reinforcement. Bubbles would be the reinforcement. If we're playing with our kiddo, we're playing bubbles out in the yard, we're trying to get them to say bubbles, the bubble itself is the reinforcer. So, oh, they said bubbles, or they said bu-bu-bu, or they asked for more bubbles. Bubbles, blow bubbles. We're about to blow them now so that we can continue like, oh, see, you said this, so now you get the bubbles. So bubbles would be a reward. Food, though, I get a lot of families who think that food is a reinforcement, and it is. It can be a reinforcement dependent on the kiddo. So I get moms or dads, I should say that too, moms and dads who will say, oh, I've been working on food. I really want him to say eat. I want him to be able to tell me he or she when she's hungry. I just want to know. And so we're working on food, or we're working on the sign for eat. We're working on that, but they're not doing it. One thing is for certain kiddos, especially kids who have sensory aversions, oral motor aversions, food might not be highly motivating. So they're not going to ask you to eat because maybe food, they just don't want to eat what you're presenting to them. So that's a hard one to try to get a child to say if food is not a reinforcement for them. And there's a big difference between presenting green beans to a child and presenting, say, Skittles to a child. Skittles is going to be the reinforcement in that versus green beans is not going to be highly reinforcing. So if we are working on food and we are trying to reinforce something, make sure it's a highly preferred thing that they like. Make sure you already know it's something that they have in their food pattern that they like on a daily basis. You know it's something that they will eat on any given day. Versus presenting something new, a different texture. Kiddos who have food aversions, again, this is not the time to try to promote them to say, oh, eat or hungry or something like that. It might be a little bit harder. So again, provide rewards that you know are highly motivating. One of those things is, I hate to say it, but electronics. Electronics is highly motivating for kiddos right now. And that's, again, I don't want to get off into kind of a whole different debacle of that, but sometimes we can see kids who are who are more motivated to talk and to speak and to ask for something if it's something that they want. And again, I always relate this back a little bit to being an adult too. Even as an adult, I am probably going to definitely ask for a pay raise, but I'm going to be a little bit more skeptical to ask for something that I don't really care about, you know? So it's the same thing. You know that a child is going to be a little bit more motivated to want to speak or to ask for something if it's something that they want. And so again, when we're teaching or coaching parents, I notice that that's one of the mistakes. They're trying to get them to say something. They're dangling something in front of their face, trying to get them to say it, but really and truly the child has absolutely no motivation to say it. It's not something that they're interested in. They don't care about it. They don't want it. Okay, so sorry. Please forgive me about that. It just totally cut out. It's my internet. I know that that's what's going on. So anyways, though, and I think I wrapped that up, but I want to just go ahead and kind of do like a refresher overall. So again, some of the 4 common mistakes that I am finding that parents tend to make when trying to get our kids to talk is overly prompting. Remember the 1/3 rule? We don't want to overly prompt. Say bubbles, you can do it, say bubbles. Just say bubbles. You know, let's do let's practice not overly prompting. Asking too many questions. We don't want to ask too many questions. So the next time you're going throughout the day, let's just keep that in mind. Like, all right, I'm just going to give some choices today rather than asking too many questions. I'm going to ask them to show me what they want rather than asking so many questions about what they want. We're going to simplify our speech. So instead of having these long drawn out questions, sentences, we're going to take it down a notch and just add 1 word, add 2 words to it. And then the last thing is we're going to work on reinforcers or rewards. Find something that motivates them. Pick out their favorite toy, their favorite food, their favorite anything that is highly motivating. Let's make sure that it's something that they like and that they love. And then that way, whenever we're working on some speech things with them, it's something that you know that they're passionate about and that they love. So again, pick some positive reinforcements that you know that they're going to like. So I just wanted to recap that. I'm so sorry I got cut off from the previous video. But please, again, feel free to ask me anything. You're more than welcome to follow me on Instagram, Early Intervention Therapy Services, EI Therapy Services on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook at Early Intervention Therapy Services, and I'm now on YouTube. I've got minimal videos, but I'll definitely be adding to it in the upcoming weeks. Also, I do my website, earlyinterventiontherapyservices.com. I do blogs there, which I'll be posting some new blogs too. So anytime you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I will be streaming next week for Autism Week, which I'm very excited about. I'll be streaming next week, and I want to do a Q&A type thing. So I will just sit here on live, and I will discuss a topic, but then post topic, I would love to do a question and answer with some parents. So if you have any questions that you've been saving, go ahead, write them down, and I will be live next week, and you can kind of pick my brain. Again, I don't know everything, but I've definitely been in the field long enough to learn a few things and some things that I think I could educate parents on, especially with autism as well, speech delays and autism. So if you have any questions, again, I will be live next week. We'll announce it sometime soon, the day and time, so that we can link up and you guys will have it in your calendar. But yes, if you have anything going on with your kiddo that you want to kind of ask me about, next week will be the time to do that. Let's try some homework this week, though. You know, it's Monday. We're off to a good start. Why don't you try these 4 things that I've recommended this week and let me know what you think. And again, each child is different, so sometimes one size doesn't fit all. But if it does happen to fit your kiddo and it works, great. If not, we can change it around. We can try some different things that might work for your kiddo, because each kiddo is different. But in the upcoming weeks, like I said, next week I will be streaming for Autism Week, so come back next week. The following weeks, hopefully I will post some more. I've got tons of tips that I love to give parents on things that I have found that have personally worked and professionally worked with kids on helping their language development grow. The biggest thing that I can always encourage is patience, though, and that is way easier said than done. We want our kids to talk so desperately bad that we get so overeager, and it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. So my biggest thing I could say is patience. Again, that's a hard one because speech can sometimes take us a little bit longer than we would like as parents. But I think with some of these helpful tips. I hope that they will definitely help in your household at least a little bit. So anyways, tune in next week, guys. I look forward to chatting with you and hearing about some of your stories or questions that you may have. Otherwise, follow me on social media and we can connect professionally that way. Happy Monday. Have a great week, guys, and please feel free to share this video. Adios.